the issues with journal publishers has come around at the same time as digitization, but I'm not sure that there's necessarily a cause and effect. I think more of it is along the lines of just there's so much information being created. The tenure model at institutions is so ingrained now in terms of where you should be publishing and what type of information you should be looking at that I think they just kind of have us over a barrel. And unlike the music industry, which was done, where people were, sharing materials illegally, that was all around, personal consumption for the most part, not professional ethics. And I think that that's where we start to see some problems there to see where the solution might actually be. But this gives you a little bit more detailed information about the cost of journals in some disciplines. And while it was saying science publications in this particular video, really it does go beyond science, and you can see that even into business. Humanities, not so much, I will say, but social sciences and humanities, we're seeing very high prices, and you can see that the average increase is quite high as well. Does anybody know how much the library's subscription budget has increased in the last 2 years? 0. Yeah, right, Christian's got it. 0%, which means that we've had cuts, which many of you have been involved in, because we can't keep, we had a little bit of flux in our budget, but with increases around these amounts. Now the one moderating factor is OhioLink. Because of our licensing partnership with our other OhioLink institutions, we have managed to keep the cost of journals down in many disciplines. So for example, chemistry is probably not 9.8%, but it's still probably close to 7, even with our OhioLink partnerships, because chemistry is one of those ones that if you have a chemistry program on campus, you absolutely must have the American Chemical Society journals in order for it to be accredited, and then they have you kind of over a barrel, so we have to continue to pay for them. Some other disciplines we've been able to keep closer to 5%, 5 and 6%, but still you can see that there's been quite an increase in the last several years. Scholarship is supposed to be a public good. You write papers and you publish your scholarship so that other people can find them and build upon your work. It's given away freely by those of us in the room, and yet journal publishing is largely under corporate control. Now that's not 100% true. I just mentioned the American Chemical Society, but sometimes scholarly associations are no better than for-profit institutions. So if scholars are signing away their rights, that means that they have no ability then to use it in a way that they see fit in sometime in the future. At the same time, academic libraries are forced to buy it back and to pay the prices that the journal publishers ask. There was a study done recently that showed that some of the top journal publishers, their profit margins for the last couple years have been in the 30 to 40% range. Yeah, so it's hard to justify that those types of prices when they're seeing that kind of profit. So if the real issues then are, can we get access to the information that is being published? And if we can't get that access, what ends up happening? And so for a faculty member on campus, they might not get the journal article that they needed for the grant proposal. They may not have included 1 or 2 articles that were difficult to get in a literature review, and they're dinged on that when it gets into the peer review process. A graduate student who's doing a dissertation search doesn't find one of the seminal pieces that they were looking for. So libraries are in a bind, and that impacts the authors who are on our campus. And so what are some of the possibilities for authors to do? One is to publish in open access journals, and the other one is to, and these are not mutually exclusive, to retain the rights to reuse and post your articles online. So open access scholarly journals, the gold standard. That would be journals that have been, as soon as they're published, the information is made available. We're still talking about peer-reviewed, high-quality journals here. We're not talking about some of the vanity presses or some of the things that we've heard some predatory practices in. There's been some articles in the Chronicle recently. But these are journals that were started largely by people who were disgruntled with the commercial publishing venues and decided to start their open source journal. So this gives you a little idea of the number of open access papers that have been published over the, well, it's a little older, but in the first 10 years of this decade. And you can see that there's a couple different things listed here. PLOS One is probably one of the ones that people are really familiar with. We have several people on our campus who, and that stands for Public Library of Science, and there's many journals that come under that. Many disciplines are part of that. The Springer Open Choice, that's one that, as a librarian, I don't like these. These are ones where it's a for-profit publisher, but if the author pays an extra fee, the article that they publish in that subscription-based journal is open access. So that means that the institutions are paying twice for that article, because we're paying for our subscription to it, and then the author, either through grant funding or some other mechanism, departmental funds, some other mechanism, is paying again to make it open access.
Something that they wrote.
Something that they wrote, exactly. So those I don't think are great models, but lots and lots of publishers are now making that option available in an author agreement. I don't recommend it, but that's up to the individual faculty member. But again, that's paying the journal twice for that information. So when we talk about scholarly open access journals, some of the things that I hear sometimes from faculty and administrators as well, but the tenure process requires that we publish in highly ranking journals in terms of impact factor, or this is another measure, the SJR something journal rank. But there are high impact, high quality open access journals. Not in every field, and I'll be the first to admit that. And I think that that's why on this campus, biology is probably the leader in open access journal publishing, because there are so many high quality journals in their field. But there are those in other fields as well, and I think that they are growing. Studies have shown that open access research is also cited more often than research that's solely behind a subscription wall. And there was a study done actually in one of the PLOS One journals to see if that was because faculty were only putting their highest quality things in open access, or they were self-citing or anything, but removing all the other variables, they still showed that open access research is being cited and therefore has a higher impact than research that is only behind a subscription wall. So last year in the spring, I think, we were approached, David was one of the people who this faculty member approached as well, by a faculty member in psychology who was interested in publishing in, I think had actually had a paper accepted in one of the PLOS One open access journals, and was looking to see if there was any assistance on campus to help him pay his author fees. Typically, while it's not 100%, most of the higher ranking, higher impact, well-known open access journals do require author page fees or author article fees. And he was looking for some help in paying those. There wasn't a fund available at the time, and so we had a conversation about it at a provost council and looked to see what open access publishing was being done on campus. And as I said, biology was definitely the number one department using open access journals. They had over 15 in the last few years, with the average publishing price between $1,200 and $2,200. They have primarily funded those fees through the grants that they receive, because most grants allow you to pay article fees for open access publishing with your grant money. The faculty member in psychology didn't have that kind of funding, and that's why he was looking for things. We do have a faculty member in English who's on the editorial board of hybrid journals, so that once they pay their fee, that the article goes open source. But we don't have a whole lot of people at this point in time, it looked like, doing open source publishing. So I had a conversation, like I said, we had a conversation at the Provost Council, and then a further conversation with Paul Vanderberg in graduate and continuing programs, and Joe Saliba. And so one of the things that the university has done is institute an open access publishing fund pilot, and you all have information at your desk there about that. And this will be run through the libraries. Hopefully within the next day, the application will be online through our website. But it'll allow faculty to apply for assistance if they don't have a grant that allows them to charge article fees to the grant. It'll give them some options for funding in open access publishing, and graduate students as well, UDRI researchers, really anybody on campus who's publishing in scholarly journals. Go ahead. This is a pilot. And once the funds are expended, we will do a review of that. We have $15,000 right now, and we'll see how long it takes us to expend that. But I do know that there are some other options for funding on campus, and that's why there's a limit to the amount that people can ask for in a given year or for a given article. But we're hoping that this encourages more people to consider open access. We won't pay, though, for the ones that are behind a paywall where the additional fee allows them to be open access. Because again, the university is already paying for the subscription to those. But we're excited about this. Lots of other schools our size and bigger have done these funds and have assisted their faculty. So our hope is that we'll get some good data out of it. We'll find out what faculty are looking at and what they need, and we'll be able to help promote the open access a little bit more.
Kathy, it seems like until departments have access to open access journals and feel that they are rigorous and worthy, I'm not sure how wise it would be for junior faculty members to publish an open access journal.
Well, and that's one of the things that I had a conversation with a chair or two, and they said the same thing. And one of the things that I said we could do is that when a faculty member applies for this, there's a certain set of criteria, and the libraries can say, yes, it meets the criteria, we'll have the journal invoice us and we'll pay for it. But we can also, because I'm going to be the point person on this for the time being, can also say, have you discussed this with your chair to make sure that this is a journal that makes sense for you to be publishing in. One of the criteria where it has to be listed in the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals, or hold membership in the Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association, that removes more of the possibility that it's one of those predatory journals that's more of a self-publishing vanity kind of press. And that it is something that has bearing, but that does not necessarily mean that any individual P&T committee on this campus would look at it favorably. What the libraries would like to see is that we get away from the idea that there's open access publishing and there's subscription-based publishing, and one is better than the other. The reality of it is there's lots of subscription-based journals that are DREC too, right? I mean, the things that, print publications that you still would recommend a junior faculty member to stay away from at all, if at all possible. And so I think that we just have to look at it as there's quality and there's not quality, and we should be, trying to get our faculty to be in the top quality publications, whether or not they're open access. But within the discipline, the larger discipline, that's where the quality of an open access journal can start to be heightened. It's not going to be done on necessarily a single campus. It's the biologists who've come together and said, yes, this is a high quality publication, and we're going to be putting our best research into that, and not necessarily, now I know this is every every scientist in the world wants to have a Nature publication or a Science publication. But the reality of it is those two are some of the most horrendously expensive publications that you can possibly imagine, especially when it comes to licensing on campuses. So we don't think it's going to change everything, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Then the other option available to faculty is to self-archive their own publications. And this is becoming more and more of something that authors, I think, are familiar with. So right now, as soon as you write something, as soon as you put it down in some sort of format, you own the copyright on it. And it is yours to do with what you want until you sign it away to someone else. So when you get a publication accepted, and when we get publications accepted in scholarly journals, we're asked to sign an author agreement, a publication agreement. And always as part of that is some sort of transfer of copyright. It could be a limited use, it could be 100% transfer of copyright, and that's really what it was even a decade ago, typically, is you transferred everything away. And I do want to say I'm talking primarily about journal publishing. Book publishing is a very different issue, and typically the only way to get your book published is to sign away 100% of the rights to it. But in journal publishing, I think there are increasingly more options available. And so some of the things in the second bullet that you can say that while you're transferring some of the copyright up to the publisher, you are retaining the rights to use it in your courses, to place it on a personal website or in a repository, or some other reuse that you might want to do. And one of the things that several years ago OhioLink came out with is a recommendation that our community adopt a policy of rights retention that provides access to scholarship within Ohio. I mean, the reality of it is if we do that, it provides increased access to scholarship across the country as well. But that's one of the benefits of posting our articles in a repository. And so there is a website that faculty can go to. It's called, librarians call it the Sherpa Romeo site. So the URL is up there. And I believe it's also on your publisher checklist that's at your site there. But it gives you an idea of what the standard publisher rights are when it comes to copyright for their authors. This section right here is basically telling you what can be posted on an institutional repository or on a personal website. So the author's preprint can be posted. That's pre-refereeing for this journal. An author's postprint can be posted. That's the final draft after the refereeing and all of the changes have been made. And the author cannot archive the publisher's PDF. And then there's other conditions in there. This gives you a snapshot of what you'll see in your publisher agreement. And there could be differences if you signed it before, or they could make change. If you published in this journal 10 years ago, your publisher agreement may look different than now. It was probably more restrictive, and they can make changes at any point in time. So it's not guaranteeing that this will be the publisher, the rights that the publisher's granting you, but it's given you a snapshot of what's possible. So I know that there are faculty on this campus and faculty across the country and probably across the world that are in direct violation of their author agreements, because I have gone to faculty web pages and downloaded full text of articles from the publisher PDF, and then gone and checked the rights. And unless they were able to have an addendum to their publication agreement that was pretty big, they are probably in violation. So the libraries, when we talk about the institutional repository, which is eCommons, our new service that we have kind of unveiled this month, we are going to be very diligent in making sure that we're not posting anything that is in violation of a faculty member's publication rights. And we're using the Sherpa Romeo site as the indicator of what's allowed to post in there. So if If the Sherpa Robio site does not seem to indicate that whatever the faculty member has asked to have posted is in compliance, we will ask to see the publication agreement to have them prove that it is indeed, we are allowed to put that up there. So I said this before, but these are typical definitions, but each publisher might do it somewhat differently. But when the libraries are talking about what goes into eCommons, preprints are the version that you submit to, the first version that you submit up to the publication. Postprints are the final version. It's the text as it appears, the graphics, graphs, tables, whatever, as it appears in the article, but does not have the formatting. It's not the final publisher PDF, but it is the final content, and then the publisher PDF. But it does vary by publisher, and I think it's important to check that with the publisher. The answer is probably also, how are you defining publishing? Because self-archiving on a repository or a web page may or may not be considered publishing. Now, if you were going to take, a snapshot of reviewers who have reviewed in the, Journal of Management Science or something like that, and get all these people to send you the reviews that they received, and that may require a conversation with the Journal of Management Science before. But simply self-archiving your manuscript with the reviewer's comments, I don't know. I think that might be something that you're allowed to do. But again, it would be determined by the publisher. But I do think it's true that seeing the progression of the research, that's one of the reasons I think that the physics folks, started, because they wanted, you can actually investigate the progression of an idea in physics through those preprint servers, through the first publication, conference proceedings. There really is a way of seeing that. And so it happens in some disciplines. And so the question is it happening in yours at this point in time?